Now that we have our form built, we're going to need to choose a form method. If you've worked with HTML before, you know that whenever you create a form, you're going to need to include the method attribute. The method attribute is going to tell the server how to transmit the data from the form to the handling script. You have two choices with method, get and post. With respect to forms, the difference between get and post is in how the information is passed from the form to the processing script. The get method sends all the gathered information along as part of the URL. We never actually put a value in our form, but when I actually sent the data from the last exercise, the information was passed on with the URL. This is an example of how get works. The post method is going to transmit the information invisibly to the user. When the user is going to submit a form, the URL that the user would see is going to not contain any of this information. This information will all be hidden from the user. So the page would simply look something like this. It would actually probably say PHP, and I'll show you once we actually build this part of our page. When you're trying to decide which method to use, keep in mind these factors. With the get method, only a limited amount of information can be passed. The get method is going to send the data to the handling script publicly, which means that if you're collecting any sort of sensitive data, it can be viewable with anyone with an eyesight of the browser. This is going to create a larger security risk. The page generated by a form that uses the get method can be bookmarked, but with a post method it cannot. Also, if users try to reload the page via the post method, they will be prompted by a warning. If you use the get message, you will not get the warning. All in all, the get method is not very secure and is rarely used on forms. Generally, we will always use the post method. Usually, you will only use get requests when asking for information from the server. So if you are going to have a search page, they almost always use the get method, as do sites that paginate results. So a site that has the ability to browse categories of products, for instance. The post is normally used to trigger a server-based action. This might be the submission of a contact form, like the one we're building here, or the submission of a blog's comment form, where the result is going to be added to a database and therefore a page. As I mentioned, most of the time when you're going to be building forms, you'll almost exclusively be using the post method for handling the form data. So we'll go ahead and we'll type post in for the value of our method. Remember that the form method's attribute simply tells the browser how to send the form data to the receiving script. Because there may be a lot of data in the form submission, including all of the comments, it wouldn't really make sense for the user to bookmark the resulting page. Post is a much more logical method, plus it's much safer. If we simply save our page and we reload and fill out the form again, you can now see that no data is passed on in the URL field. Even though our form is not actually doing anything with the data is now using the post method, which in essence is not going to show any of that information. Anytime you're building a form with any sort of important information, you want to make sure that that information is not seen within the HTML source code. So now that we've created the basic HTML form capable of taking input from the user, we're going to need to write the PHP script that will receive and process the submitted form data. In this simple example, our PHP script is simply going to repeat what the user entered into the form. Later on in the class, we'll learn how to take this information and store it into a database, send it in an email, or write it to a file. In the next movie, I'll show you how you can receive the form data using PHP.